Happy New Year. Welcome to the Top 5 Show. My name is Chance Brown. I'm going to be your host. This is our first episode of 2023, and I'm excited to be back with you this year. We're going to keep bringing great guests to the table. We're going to keep bringing some great content. We're going to be adding a few things like book reviews. I'm going to be relaunching in the month of January my blog that I used to run. And so I'm excited to not only bring fresh content to that, but also rehash some old content and maybe see, hey, did that age well or not? We'll find out. So excited that you're here. The whole goal of this show, if this is your first time joining, thank you. The whole goal of this show is to bring actionable items that you can take and put into your real estate business that's going to help build it, make it strong, and make it profitable for the long term. So we're going to jump right in. I mentioned bringing back the blog. I love to write. I really do. It's one of my favorite things. As much as I like visiting in this format and talking to people, I really love to write, and I have gotten away from it. And so one of my goals in 2023 is to bring back my writing, because what I've been doing from that standpoint over the last year and a half or so is just putting these long form posts into the Facebook group of my brokerage. And some of them are pretty weird and abstract. Some of them are very actionable. Some of them are, hey, you need to think about this, or are you thinking about this, or what if this happened? Just trying to build the creative juices and get those flowing and get people thinking about things that they might not otherwise think about. And we call them Deep Thoughts with Chance in the group now, jokingly, because of the old Saturday Night Live Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy sketches. But I posted one the other day that I felt like, not only based on the feedback I got out of that group, but I just feel like it's something that is super easy and super applicable and would be a great start, especially as people are trying to set New Year's resolutions and goals for the year. It could kind of tie into that. And so this is going to be not a top 5 like we normally do, but a top 3. And it's 3 questions to ask yourself. And the inspiration for these 3 questions came from literally like a 4-second cut of the TV show The Crown on Netflix. If you're not familiar with The Crown, it follows the life of Queen Elizabeth II from, her and Philip basically getting married all the way up through wherever they end it next season. Next season is the last season. And it's a cool show in that it's really well written. It's really well produced. But one of the things I really like about it is every 2 seasons, so there's 6 total seasons, every 2 seasons, they change the actors. Instead of aging the original actors all the way through, they just change the entire cast, which is, I think, really kind of cool and a different way of looking at how to produce a TV show. But more than anything, I'm super surprised that I actually like this show as much as I do. When I say as much as I do, I've watched the entire series at least twice, many of the episodes more than that. And I am not a person who cares one single bit, like no cares at all about the royal family. I tend to follow the Ron Swanson rule of history began on July 4th, 1776. It's weird. I don't know why I love the show as much as I do, but I do love it. And not the first time I watched it, because I was watching it for entertainment value. But as I watched it more, and I'll put it on as background noise in the background when I'm working at night, things like that, there are some really great takeaways, both in life and in business, that come out of this show, and specifically how the Queen operates and things like that. So how does that tie into how you're going to help build a profitable real estate business? Here we go. In the latest season of The Crown, there is an episode where the Queen is going to give what is now known as her Annus Horribilis speech. The Crown, the royal families had a particularly tough year. There was a fire at Balmoral, which was their home. A couple of the kids got divorced, things like that. It was just a tough year for the Queen. And she was going to give this speech, and she's going through it with her husband, and she's going through it with her mom there. And the mom is, and several of the other courtesans are pushing back on this speech. They don't want her to give it. They think it shows weakness. They think it's going to not be met well. It was a particularly difficult time in Great Britain economically. And so they thought it would look like she was getting up and here's the most powerful woman in the world and one of the richest women in the world. And she's complaining that she had a bad year. And that was kind of the feeling. Well, guess what? She gave the speech anyways, because she's the queen and she can do what the hell she wants to. And as they're arguing this out, the queen mother, the queen's mom, says, does it follow our rule of 3 questions? And then she says the 3 questions. And I thought to myself, man, that is really good. We need to talk about that. So here are the 3 questions. The 3 questions are, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said right now? And does it need to be said by us? I think that this is a great 3-question sequence to ask ourselves when something comes up. I honestly think it's probably something we should ask ourselves more often than we'd like to admit to or think we probably need to. And so I want to kind of walk through each one of them and talk a little bit about it. So the first one is, does it need to be said? I see stuff on social media. I see stuff in messaging. I think we need to maybe temper ourselves a little bit, right? Not everything needs to be posted on social media. Not everything you think, not everything you feel, not everything you do has to be out there for the world to see. Nor do we need to respond to everything that we see. If you don't like something, move past it. If it doesn't meet your standards or agree with you, is it a battle you want to fight? Does it need to be thrown out there? And so I think that this question really does a great job of tempering us. Now, number one, it tempers us internally so that we just clear our minds of those things. But number two, it also kind of makes sure that we don't do something that self-sabotages us in public. And by public, I mean sometimes social media. The internet is now part of that public sphere, I think. And so there's that. Now, I want to just give a quick caveat that this knife cuts 2 ways, right? So don't temper yourself when you need help. If you need help, ask for it. It's important that you do. That said, I think that how we respond and if we're going to say something could be probably more empathetic, not only in what we say, but in how we say it. And also less is just typically more when it comes to things like that. The second question, though, I think is the really important one, especially in this universe of social media and instant conversation. I heard a guy talking about what social media was like from an analogy standpoint a couple of years ago, and I thought it was a really good analogy. It was, back in the 40s and 50s, you walk out of your house and you're walking down the street and your neighbors say hi and you wave and all of that and everything's fine. And maybe there's, somebody selling something and you walk through the grocery store and they say hi or whatever. Now you walk through the grocery store and it's like every single person in the grocery store is yelling their opinion at you and you can't respond. And I thought that was just a really great analogy of what social media is like, and it just inundates you and wears on you. I think that if we took pause before we respond to things, before we feel like we need to make a comment, before we act on most of what we do, we would probably do a far better job in the way that we communicate. Now, I say this as somebody who typically runs a little bit hot. I struggle with this. I struggle with it as a spouse. I struggle with it as a father. I struggle with it as a business leader. But as I get older, I think that I've gotten better at being less reactionary. I think I've gotten better at holding my tongue, sleeping on something. And then if I still feel like it needs to be said, then I'll say it. Don't get me wrong. But I just kind of try to get the emotion out of it. And I don't lose perspective because of that emotion. I don't lose perspective because of pride. I will tell you that just this weekend, I lost my temper with my daughter. And I didn't say anything that's, going to traumatize her long-term or anything like that. But I was very harsh about something that needed to be said to her. I probably could have said it in a different way if I had taken a minute to walk away. And I could have probably been more coaching her on life instead of presenting her with some fairly harsh realities. And so I think it's important that if we take that step back, does it need to be said right now? No. Hey, we have fewer regrets if we wait to respond. We have fewer regrets. More importantly than that, though, I think that when we wait to respond to things that kind of get under our skin right at that moment, or feel like we have to jump in, I think that we train ourselves. We start to train our body and our mind to slow down, not be so reactive, to not respond out of a place of emotion or blame or anger or pride, but really go to a place where we are more contemplative, where we're more relaxed, where we have more respect, mostly for ourselves, but also to our audience as well, right? If we go to that first place of emotion, blame, anger, all that, I think that that ends poorly almost every time. But if we come from a place where we've had a minute to relax and take the emotion out, we're not arguing for the sake of arguing, right? And we respect both ourselves and the person we're responding to, makes it enormous different. Now, before I get to that third question, I do want to say this. Sometimes if you wait, sometimes if you say, no, this does not need to be said right now, and there's a little bit of a delay, guess what? You can re-ask yourself that first question. Does it even need to be said at all? We get worked up in a moment. We think we need to say something. Do we really? After we let that moment go, do we still feel like it's important? Because if it is, say it. But if it's not important, does it really need to be said at all? So we can go back and ask ourselves that first question over again. Okay, now moving on to that third question is, does it need to be said by us? Is it you that needs to say something? Are you that person's mom or dad or spouse? Are you that person's boss? Are you that person's spiritual guru or doctor or scientist or political consultant or whatever else we all want to try to be in life, especially on social media? Ask yourself, what's the person that is receiving my message going to feel about me? What's the person going to think about me when I say this? Does it need to be in a public format? If you see somebody that's struggling or has a question or needs something, could you send them a DM? Could you pick up the phone and call them and really show them that you care? And maybe, just maybe, build a relationship off of that could help your business in the long term, as opposed to putting something in a place where there's very little context. Nobody knows if you're being a smartass, if you're being funny, if you're being mean, if you're being just sincere, but you could have that conversation offline in real life and help them. And maybe you're doing this in real life, and that's fine. Let me tell you something. And I learned this as a husband, and this is my message to all the fellas out there. Sometimes your wife just wants to tell you stuff and doesn't need you to try to fix it. My wife would come home and complain about something at the office, or complain about something at work. And my instinct as somebody who wants to help people was to jump in and try to fix that problem. When in fact, all she wanted to be was heard. All she wanted to be was come home, tell her husband how things went that day, have a shoulder to cry on, have somebody to support her. But she didn't want the problem fixed. She could fix it on her own. She's a grown-ass woman. Sometimes that's all people need when they come out and they say things. They just need somebody to listen. They just need somebody to support them. So those are the three questions. Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said right now? And does it need to be said by us? I think that if we employed these three questions in our lives more often, we would probably do a better job of effectively communicating with people. We would probably do a better job of building relationships with the people in our lives. And all of that trickles down into how we operate our business and the feeling, the experience we create for people about our business. So I hope that helps. I know it's weird that that's what I took out of a 3 or 4 second sequence inside of a TV show on Netflix, but I think it's really good life advice. I think it's something that we could model after. So there you go. That is our first episode of the Top 5 show. Even though it wasn't 5, it was 3. Looking forward to a great 2021. I hope that you are too. We'll be back very soon with our first guest of 2023, which I'm super stoked about because it's going to be a different look at how to approach leadership. So hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.